Hello, Awaken Beauties. This is Cassandra, your beauty, health, and CBD coach for women. And I am here to just review over an article that is quite a serious discussion when it comes to CBD and if you are currently taking medications or if you are looking to purchase CBD for someone that is currently on medications. CBD is not for everybody, and I am not a medical professional, so I will just proclaim that here and right now. But, when it comes to CBD and how it interacts with the body, considering that our body has its own endocannabinoid system, it's an innate and intuitive biochemical response. And if I imagine your body were the internet, and when you take CBD or phytocannabinoids, that these are little messengers and emails that are dispersed in the body and sending different messages within the body. And the email is opened, it's transcribed, which is through the neurons and then through your neurotransmitters and whatnot in the body, is essentially the same as what CBD does. So you're opening the email, you're reading the messages, and you're, moving into what's next accordingly to what the email has progressed you or asked you to do. Now, sometimes you can just delete them. Email 0 is always my goal. But here we're going to discuss what is the chances that CBD will interact with medications. And about 2 months ago, I wrote an article on this, and it's a fairly complex topic, but it's also very simple. So when we talk about CBD, number one, does it interact with different drugs? Yes and no. The CBD and or phytocannabinoids, when we talk about our endocannabinoid system, we already produce our own endocannabinoids. They innately are within our body and keep our bodies in homeostasis. Now, when we're involving cannabinoids or phytocannabinoids, taking them through something, we now see the market flooded with, which is a CBD tincture, a topical, any kind of application of CBD. If you are on medications, there may be a output of how the medication is transcribed to the body. So I wanted to walk through a little bit of how this happens, and first and foremost, let you know that there is no interaction with CBD and drugs that happen interchangeably through phytochemicals in the body. But what CBD does do, in short, is it goes through our CYP450 cytochrome pathway, which we know in functional medicine as your detoxification channel. It's where all medications go to disperse through the body, to get channeled through the body and brought up through different enzymes for you to feel the effects. It's also where it removes those phytochemicals and chemicals and medications in the body. It's the P450 system is essential to keeping a healthy body. And there are some genetic variations and SNPs in some people that they have a poor system, meaning they have a poor liver detoxification system. And so I want to preface, as well is if you know this about yourself, you always want to make sure you're working with a medical professional to make sure that you're safely taking medications and safely, if you're going to introduce cannabis or CBD also into your regime. So moving back, CBD does not affect a medication, but what it does do is it goes down that same pathway. So when you internally take a sublingual or a topical patch, not necessarily a skincare or a topical lotion that's, kind of just in that area for concentrated pain, but a patch is going to drive through, and it's made to go through the skin layers to get into the blood and circulate through the blood for the benefit. So when you take CBD, we've got our 300 here, you're going to take a sublingual underneath the tongue, release, hold for 30 seconds, and it's going to travel through your enzymatic pathway in your liver, which is the P450 system. Okay, so let's go over, and I just have my article here up on the web just for you to follow along, and I am going to read through it, but sometimes I feel like if there's an audio and there's somebody to walk through it with me, it's a little bit more fun. So what is the cytochrome P450 system? So it's found within the liver. The system is responsible for metabolizing potentially every toxic compound, which I already spoke about, including 60% of any drugs you consume. You know, and so why do we have it, and why does it matter? And so in order to determine the appropriate dosage of medications, doctors often calculate the average amount of time it takes for a drug to process through this system. That way they know the efficiency. And when I was talking about a genetic predisposition to having a P450 system that doesn't work as well, you can have a delayed response or an increased response to a drug interaction, the way that it is metabolized through this system. So cannabidiol, right? So cannabidiol, that's going to be coming from the phytonutrients of the hemp or cannabis or marijuana plant in the cytochrome P450 system. So here's what happens. Cannabidiol can inhibit that P450 system's ability to metabolize certain drugs, leading to an overall increase in processing times. So interestingly, CBD oil is not alone in the effect on the drug metabolism. There are other items such as grapefruit, watercress, St. John's wort, golden seal, and there's other different constituents and compounds that can also have the similar terms in the P450 pathway. So it's not just CBD. That's why somebody says if you're on a medication, please don't take grapefruit while you're on it, because we know that these studies have verified that that can inhibit it. So when the 450 system is impacted in this way, it leads to higher levels of certain drugs in your system at that one time. So it increases the intensity. And this can cause the unwanted symptoms and side effects, which would seem like an overdose. So if you're taking medications affected by cannabidiol, and there's a list below here, you should consult with your doctor. Any client that I put on CBD, I know their symptoms, I know what's going on within their medical history, and I always say, please consult with your doctor. That is then up to them to take personal responsibility for taking this healing plant. So here's a list of drugs that work within the CYP450 enzymatic pathway system. And you're going to see everywhere from antibiotics to anesthetics, immune modulators, antivirals, beta blockers, ibuprofen, Tylenol, all of these different components and compounds go through that same pathway. So if you see any of these specific drugs, these are the things to be aware of when you're taking CBD with them. There are certain medications known as prodrugs that need to be metabolized to produce the therapeutic compounds. In other words, if you ingest an inactive compound and once it's in the body, it's produced into an active drug. If this process is dependent of the pathway, then inhibitors can result in too little active drug in the body for the desired therapeutic effect. So what we're talking about there is that drugs that are taken and then the enzymatic is induced by the body, that it can have a reduced effect. There are some examples of those here, codeine being one of them. So, as I noted, if you're worried about that pathway might not be functioning properly, physicians can test your system to see if you have a good, let's call it, detoxification pathway. In the article, if you want to go to it, I'll briefly go over this, combining alcohol and CBD oil. Alcohol and cannabis do not necessarily go down the same pathway. So you can see here, alcohol depends on a few different metabolic pathways in the body. Primary enzymes involve these right here, in which CYP450 is involved, but it's in an indirect way. So one of the great things about CBD is some interesting tidbits here is CB1 receptors are a significant player in reinforcing and motivating attributes of alcohol. And then combining the alcohol and CBD at significantly lower levels can result in lower levels of alcohol. And CBD really, if you think about alcohol, it it helps homeostasis in your body. So it's going to bring you up when you're down and down when you're up, kind of like an adaptogen. So it may, for those that have addictions to alcohol, help reduce those cravings and start those neural pathways and neural connections in the brain to kind of ease off of that addictive mentality within the dopamine and serotonin receptors. Another interesting fact about caffeine and CBD, which I really think is really, really insightful, and how they can play really well together, is caffeine is essentially, and you'll see it right here, molecularly very similar to the adenosine in our body. So they activate the A2 receptor, and caffeine binds to the A2 receptors, inhibiting the reuptake of adenosine. So what am I saying there? So caffeine kind of takes the place in the receptor of the adenosine. You're not getting the adenosine. And what does the adenosine do in the body? You'll read a little bit further, and what it does is it's known to give the body that rest and digest. So we need adenosine in our body to give us that calm, parasympathetic, sympathetic balance for us to be in that rest and digest state, to intake all of our nutrition, to really have that calm sense and state of being, one that is hardly achieved by many of us, especially when we're eating on the go or reading research while we're eating, which is I'm guilty of. So what happens is if that adenosine, it's a blocker of that adenosine, which is caffeine, it gives you that excitatory state, it gives you that energy, and it gives you that really, really kinetic feeling when you drink coffee, which many of us are addicted to. So what's interesting about CBD, it's a partial antagonist, or a partial agonist, of the A2 receptor. So by combining, the theory is with caffeine and CBD, is adenosine is blocked across the board, resulting in you get the benefits of the energy from the caffeine, but the CBD, its unique receptor relationship with the CB2 receptors is it helps reduce anxiety. So you kind of get that nice high with or energy from the caffeine, but you don't get that kind of blood sugar high, rise, and dip, or the caffeine high and dip. Now, it can help prolong it. So one thing that you want to be aware of is when you're drinking CBD and caffeine, is you'll read here in the article, depending on when you take the caffeine, the CBD, the fatty molecules, may elongate the interaction and the caffeine to stay in the body longer. So note to self, after 4 p.m., be careful. I'm a really fast metabolizer. I've had my MTHR and all of my genetics tested, and I go caffeine like that. So I have taken CBD with coffee. I didn't really notice too much of a difference because I don't really have an issue with coffee. But for some people that just really need to kind of take that edge off or don't process caffeine very well with the adenosine receptors, can help be a double block, but at the same time, CBD kind of bring that anxiety and some of those side effects from coffee down, which is really great. So I thought that was really interesting about coffee. And then lastly, can CBD oil be an addictive? So, much to the point here, what is the question? Well, really, what is an addictive personality and everything that we can get addicted to? We can get addicted to anything, but there's nothing biochemically in the CBD and phytocannabinoids or cannabinoids that's necessarily going to make you addicted to CBD. Now, THC, CB1 receptors, that has a psychotropic effect. There may be some desensitization that goes on there, or some kind of different neural pathway that could inhibit or excite, and having to be, because of the levels that raise, growing a tolerance. But that's why we always say with THC or cannabis use, you need to take breaks. You need to start low, you need to go slow. Same with CBD, you need to start low and you need to go slow. But as of today, there are no side effects, other than the only side effects that I have really witnessed with any of our CBD clients. And I am a coach, so I've coached a lot of clients. I have a client that has been on 8 opiates a day, and we've gotten her down to 1. And there is no addiction. There's just the body's being readjusted. The body's on fire. It's being taken. The fire is being taken back down. And then it's really working with a professional and figuring out your dosages, helping you get in the right price per milligram and working that all out. You don't need to do it alone. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and reach out to me. Hello@Beauty Ecology. My name's Cassandra. And so, you know, worrying about being addicted, you know, again, we just want to make sure that we're using it respectively. What are the purposes that you're using it? And most people are using it for better sleep, less anxiety, and less pain. You know, the fastest growing demographic with CBD is 65 plus. So there's all these different variables of why we use CBD. But when looking at a chemical impact of CBD oil, the answer is no. Cannabidiol is not physically addictive in the same way that opiates, you know, alcohol and other drugs can be. So it also doesn't have any withdrawals from it, which is great. And in fact, most people use it to help withdrawals from other addictions or other phytochemical interactions when you're trying to dose down off of other medications. You know, so I kind of already spoke about how to use CBD, and that's really just be important to understand your serving sizes, you know, usually between 10, 15, and 20 milligrams per day. It's a good starting place for most people. And everybody is different. And you'll read any article and I'll always say, everybody's different, everybody's different, everybody's different. So find somebody that, you know, has a really, really, really good source, ask for tests, make sure that it's grown organically, understand the milligram and the bioavailability of the product. And also, you know, how is it blended? There's a lot of private label companies out there, and it's just MCT oil and some hemp grown in there. And there's a lot of bell curves with full spectrum or isolate, and the consistency is really important. So know what you're buying, ask good questions, be careful on the internet. And if you suspect that you are not metabolizing CBD very well, ask your doctor to test your P450 enzyme system pathway, and there may be some kind of correlation there that you never knew you didn't even have. So that's what I wanted to kind of go over. I will go ahead and put this article, How CBD Interacts with Medicines, in the link. If you have any questions, go ahead, make sure that you leave me an email at hello@beautyecology.com, and make sure that you like our YouTube channel or anywhere else that this is posted. Follow along with us, and thank you again, and make sure that you keep your endocannabinoid system in balance. This is Cassandra, your health, beauty, and CBD coach, signing off.